My name is Fred Cook, and I'm the director of the USC Center for Public Relations at the Annenberg School. And I'm here today to share with you the results of our Global Communications Report, which we just released a couple of weeks ago. You'll see on the cover there is a Rubik's Cube, and that Rubik's Cube is the symbol for what we call new reputation. And that's because it's more complicated to build a reputation for a company that's ever been before. You turn one side of the cube, and it changes the other side. Finding that simple alignment among all of your different audiences can be a real challenge in this day and age. We've conducted 4 different surveys of investors, PR people, consumers, and employees to find out their views of reputation. And I'm going to start by just saying that investors and PR people all believe that it has changed over the past few years because consumers' expectations have increased, employees are more vocal, the issues are more complex, then the definition of reputation has broadened, and it's become very political. But in spite of that, it is more important than it's ever been. For consumers, 62% say it's very important when they're making a decision to buy a product. Employees, 74% say it's very important when they're deciding where to work. And investors, 93% say their reputation is important when they're deciding where to invest. All of these groups believe that companies are responsible for using their resources to help solve societal problems. So this sets up an interesting dynamic. We looked at 4 aspects of reputation: business performance, corporate values, communications, and social purpose. And we asked each audience in the next 5 years, which is going to be most important to you in evaluating a company's reputation. So in yellow on this chart, you'll see the consumers, in red, employees, and in green, investors. In the blue, you'll see what public relations professionals predicted they would say. And sometimes they're accurate, and sometimes they're not. And as you'll see on this chart, all 3 audiences, consumers, employees, and investors, thought the most important aspect of reputation was business performance, more than corporate culture, more than their communications, and more than their social purpose. But PR people didn't really recognize that this was going to be the case for consumers and employees, and they sort of over-indexed on the investors. In the second box, you'll see the corporate culture. PR professionals thought that would be way more important to employees than it actually is. And you'll see down further that social purpose, they thought it would be more important to consumers than it really is. But these are the 4 components that we looked at as elements of corporate reputation. And the groups are pretty much aligned on what they feel is key. Then we broke down each of these 4 pillars into their components. So we said, what is the most important aspect in the next 5 years for business performance? Again, there was alignment with all 3 audiences that strategic vision for the future was the most important thing in building your reputation, much more so than quarterly earnings or stock performance, even for investors. And that's where PR people sort of got it wrong. They thought investors would be more interested in the day-to-day financials than the long-term vision. And knowing this really can help with your communications in terms of what you're talking about and how you're talking about the future, because that's meaningful to all of these groups. In terms of corporate culture, ethical behavior and transparency and accountability were the leaders for every group, much more so than workplace flexibility, which PR people thought would be the most important for employees. It is not the most important. Working for an ethical company is most important. And those are the things that we need to be talking about, our ethics and our accountability and our transparency, more than our business on a day-to-day basis. In communication, overwhelmingly, people were most influenced by what other people think, by online reviews of products and companies, by consumers and other people like them, much more so than media coverage and influencer endorsements. And it's interesting because most PR people spend most of their time on media coverage and influencer endorsements. Very few are building campaigns to get people to recommend or review their products or their companies online. And that can be an important portion of developing a positive reputation. So this could dictate strategies and tactics for a product launch, for a company campaign, to try to get consumers and professional independents to rank and rate these products well, instead of focusing so much time on influencers and media. And finally, with social purpose, it is an important part of corporate reputation, but I think PR people tend to underestimate how important it is for employees. And again, there was alignment that sustainability of products and services was the number one thing in building reputation, more than meeting your environmental goals, and definitely more than your public position on issues. Across the board, everyone thought sustainability of your products was the number one thing. We also ask all audiences, what kind of content, what kind of stories builds your reputation? Again, it was consumer-oriented reviews, reviews of products and company that drive reputation across the board with every group. Of course, positive workplace stories were nice for employees, and positive financial stories are nice for the investors. But overall, this idea of the consumer review is really what drives people's thinking. Further down the list, near the bottom, was endorsement from a celebrity and recommendation from an online influencer. We spend a lot of our time in public relations working with celebrities and influencers, but those are not as important as in building a long-term reputation as what consumers think and say about your company or your product. We also ask each audience, what language do you prefer when you're talking about a company doing work to improve society? And the words that were most commonly chosen were purpose, particularly by PR professionals, and sustainability, which is important to almost every audience. But we wanted to look at a couple of these words which were not very popular a little more deeply, and that is woke and ESG. We wanted to find out if woke had become a four-letter word. So we asked PR professionals, is it good for your reputation if your company is considered woke? And 43% said no, it's bad. 34% said yes. So over time, woke has become polarized and politicized to the point that it's not a positive in the PR people's minds. But when you ask consumers, they seem to understand the meaning of woke. Most of them understand it's a company trying to do something beyond their business goals that will improve society. Some don't like that idea very much and think that they're trying to force their values on others, but most people get what woke is all about. If you ask them, is woke going to influence your decision about what to buy and where to work and what to invest in? There is a little advantage for a company that's woke with consumers and employees, and a huge advantage with investors who are very invested in companies that are leaning towards doing work with social purpose. While woke may be becoming a four-letter word in the media and with political groups, it still seems to have some cachet with investors and consumers. The other term we looked at is ESG. And what we found is that most people really don't know what ESG means. Investors are most familiar with it. 64% say they're very familiar. 51% of PR professionals say they're very familiar. But consumers and employees, those numbers are in the teens. So ESG needs a little PR if it's going to become a powerful factor in corporate reputation. But when you tell people that ESG stands for environment, social, and governance, and really is a report on what a company is doing in all of those different areas, they say that that would be very beneficial for them in terms of making purchase decisions, making job decisions, and investors think it's very important in making investment decisions. So the more they know about ESG, the more important it becomes. The question is it going to be the next woke? Will it be politicized and polarizing the way woke has become? There are benefits and there are issues with ESG. Some of the benefits are it gives you a chance to tell your corporate story. It also allows socially conscious consumers to evaluate companies based on their work in the community. And it gives investors some idea of what's happening behind the financials. But there are issues too. Some people think it is too broad, some people think it is misleading, and some people think it leads to companies greenwashing their actual activities. That's why when we ask how many companies do it well, PR people think about 10%, investors think about 34%. Who do they think is doing it well? First of all, Patagonia and Amazon. and then some of the same names down the list. Apple, Microsoft, Unilever are companies that are effectively doing ESG. But ESG, most people believe, needs to be regulated. The majority of investors and PR people think it needs to be regulated in order to be more effective, and they believe that regulation is going to be mandated in the next 5 years. The majority of both groups think that ESG is going to become a requirement of companies in the United States the same way it is in the EU. We'll wait to see if that really happens. We found a surprising alignment among these three groups on a number of issues. They all agree that performance was the number one thing to build reputation. And then in performance, the vision for the future is more important than the financial aspects of today. And in culture, ethical and accountable beats flexible. And consumer reviews are more important than influencers' opinions. Sustainable products drive your reputation more than sustainable practices, and your commitments to a cause are more important than your statements about a policy. If you align your messaging with the things on the left side of this chart, we think that solving this Rubik's Cube will be a lot easier than you think it might be. I hope this brief overview has been helpful. If you want to know more about our research on new reputation, you can download the report on our website, or you can write to us and we'll send you a hard copy of the report. If you have any feedback or any ideas for us, please let us know. Thanks for listening and take care. Fight on.